Hi, everyone. Welcome to our roadmap recording. This week, you've got Tamara, Adam, and Tom. Jen's off doing the things that Jen does in mass quantities. So we're going to go ahead and cover the updates for the roadmap this week.
I feel like you
Again,
need to use our name so that way you're building brand value, Tom.
Okay. Adam's going to be talking about geeky stuff this time.
No. I mean, Microsoft Pulse.
Oh, we're going to be talking about the Microsoft 365 Pulse roadmap. This is what we discuss on a weekly basis and bring it live to you in YouTube. How's that? Is that better?
Good job, Tom. That was wonderful. You're building the brand equity for us.
We're not afraid to do critiquing live.
Last time I'm doing the intro, that's all I can say. With that awesome start, to recap, for those of you who have not joined this insanity that we call a webcast, we cover things that are in development, which means Microsoft is off, cooking the sausage and making it work. Then we have rolling out, which means it's on its way out to tenants, either in targeted release, early release, whatever. Eventually, it'll work down to where you're at. Then we have launched, which means it should be out in all the clients it was targeted for. So you should be able to go out to your tenant if you have the right target, and you should see it out there. And then finally, we have canceled items. And we do have a few this week, which I'll cover at the very end and just let you know whether they were duplicates or whatever. But with that, we're going to go ahead and start with in development. And with that, Tamara, would you like to kick it off and tell us what floats your boat this week?
Sure, there were a couple things that floated my boat. A couple of them are Microsoft Stream. Add or edit captions and transcripts for a video in SharePoint or OneDrive. Now, this is available in the commercial tenant, but is not available currently in GCC or GCC High. That's going to become available the end of June of this year and should become available by the end of December of this year for the Department of Defense. And what it means is you can upload, download, and delete captions in the web VTT file format for a video in SharePoint or OneDrive. And this will enable you to edit the transcript files generated by Teams live transcript or stream via downloading the file, editing in a text or VTT editor, and then re-uploading it. The VTT file will be displayed as captions inside the video player as a transcript in the transcript pane next to the video. So that's great, getting a lot more accessibility with those recordings. I think I'm really glad Microsoft is making sure that the technology is all inclusive. And then there's just some activity in OneDrive, and that's access your team standard and private channel files. And that'll be both for when you navigate to a site in SharePoint or OneDrive, you'll be able to access the files stored in the Teams standard and private channels associated with that site. And then also in OneDrive, easily navigate to all your team files from OneDrive. So they're adding a Your Teams section to the More Places page to allow you to easily find and work with all your files in Teams. Last thing is in OneDrive, the activity column in the My Files view. So when you navigate to My Files, to the My Files page in OneDrive, you're going to see the activity column, which shows which of your shared documents have unseen edits and comments, which nice. I'm really excited for, because then you don't have to open it and scrub it to see if anyone's made a change. It figures that out for you and notifies you. So that's coming in April. And that's coming for everybody. So everybody gets that joy.
Yeah. So Adam, would you like to cover some of the more geeky things that the rest of us don't understand?
Sure, I'll do a couple geeky ones. There's a couple not as hardcore geeky ones that I'm also interested in, but I'll wait to see if you like any of those, so that we can spread the love.
Okay.
There's quite a few updates to compliance center stuff going on. I'm going to call out one thing that I thought was hilarious. There's about 6 updates to the insider risk management stuff, and on every single one of the updates, when you go and look at the details, they have like this fat paragraph that just explains what insider risk management is, and it's copy and pasted over and over and over again on every single update, which I thought was funny. But they're doing multiple updates to it. Like I said, a couple of the ones that I thought were kind of cool. One of the things, for instance, they have is what they call file path exclusions of noisy signal management, also site URL and keyword exclusions. Basically, you have the ability to go in and control what type of information you're looking for. If you guys recall, insider risk management is all about being aware of what your users are doing inside of your tenant in case you have potentially malicious actors in there. So if you have certain things that you want to be more aware of what's going on with the activity on them than the others, this will help with that. In particular, they also have an update that they're calling Anomaly as a policy trigger. And this basically allows you to go through and set certain stuff. So for instance, say I want to set a threshold of, I have a whole bunch of contracts listed in this section, or I have a whole bunch of sensitive customer documents listed in this section. I can go in and say, okay, well, if anyone downloads 5 things in a day from this section, I should probably know about that, right? It's not that uncommon if someone's going to leave and go somewhere else. Maybe they download everything that's in their OneDrive or everything that's in their client folders. Or sometimes if they're really being malicious about it, maybe they're going to download the contracts you have, so that way they can go through and know who the people you're working with are, or how much you're charging them and stuff like that. And why it may be okay for the people to have access to that data, it might be a red flag as someone starts mass downloading stuff. So being able to go through and set some of that stuff and specifically target it in certain areas that might be more sensitive to you is really giving some power to these tools to do what they're saying they're going to do, which is ultimately around the idea of going through and protecting you from potentially malicious activity going on locally inside of your system. So kind of cool to see some of those updates coming through. Again, a lot of stuff happening in the compliance center, but in particular, a lot of stuff going through and being related to the insider risk management stuff.
So
Tom?
a couple things that I will talk about and probably hand it back over to Adam to talk about the ones that maybe I didn't touch on. First one is Microsoft Teams auto expiration of meeting recordings stored in OneDrive and SharePoint. So earlier, this had been listed in the roadmap as rolling out. At the very end of the description here, they have this item was incorrectly marked rolling out and is now corrected. So it's back in development with a release date of March of this year, and it hits GCC, GCC High, DoD, Germany, and worldwide. This one scares me to death. I don't like the fact that Microsoft is saying, hey, by default, we are going to get rid of team meeting recordings that you have stored in OneDrive and SharePoint X number of days, and I think it's like 60 days after is what the default setting is, after they've been created, because their telemetry tells them that the vast majority of people never look at another video after 60 days. I'm like, yeah, but you've got that thing of saying, well, I recorded some training videos that I want to use all year long. And if I don't remember to go out and flag that as saying, don't delete it, then it's going to disappear probably at the most inopportune time possible. And I don't care how much you try to tell people that, hey, if you want to retain this, you got to go do this setting, the whole bit. You will never reach everybody, and you will always miss the one person who had very important things that had to stay out there forever. We're going to have some discussions internally here to say, do we just want to turn this off, which you have the ability to do? And their thing is, you'll continue to store all these videos out there. You'll be taking massive amounts of space and you'll never really use it. I get that, but I don't think the draconian, and we're going to automatically delete it for you, is the way to go. My personal opinion, not real thrilled about this change, but
so
that's me.
I'll give a differing view on this. I agree with you for the most part. I will say as well too, you can go in and control this as a team policy setting. You can also like pick and choose. It doesn't have to be everyone in your tenant is doing this. It could be you can pick and choose where you want. So if there's particular groups that are going through and needing to do recordings and you want to hold it longer, you have the option to do that, which is okay. But the cynic in me would like to point out, I would have been more a fan of this setting if it was a year ago and the data was still being held in stream where you did hit caps, because our company hit a point where we had people, it's not that uncommon that we'll record meetings when we're having them with customers, especially when we're going over like deliverables or stuff like that or scoping of a project. And I'm sure a lot of those sat around and never got viewed again unless there was a problem and just took up space. So we hit a point where literally we couldn't record stuff in our internal stuff anymore, because you try to do it, they basically tell you, oh, you're out of storage, please buy more storage if you want.
Right.
And so like a year ago, I would have been more down with this, because that was then pretty debilitating for some of our customers. We have standing agreements on my team with some customers that we will record every meeting and then share the recording with them after the meeting so that they have it. And then literally we had to tell some of them, sorry, I know we've agreed contractually to do this for you, but we can't because our system's full. But the cynic part in me from this, now that it's stored in OneDrive, you're not going to fill up 4 terabytes of space in everyone's OneDrive, even if they're recording every meeting they have. So realistically speaking, why I kind of agree their telemetry may say this is Microsoft really saying, we, as in Microsoft, are paying money to store a whole bunch of shit that isn't being used, so we're going to go in and delete it. And like I said, the cynic in me more views it that way. If this was, again, where it was more common that you as a user would have a problem where space was too big, but now that they transition it over to OneDrive, you're not going to fill up 4 terabytes of space in your OneDrive for most of your users, even if they literally record every meeting they're doing. So this is basically Microsoft implementing a policy change because they are tired of paying for the storage for stuff that people aren't using.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Yeah, I look at our company or our organization and looking at the culture and everything, I'm like, this is going to bite me at some point. And I'm trying
someone's got to come to you and say they really need this recording that they have, and you're just like,
they're going to have a title that I don't want to have to deal with for something like that.
And then you're going to tell them that they just have to be sad.
Yeah, and and then I may be sad, and I don't want to be sad. So another one that I'll just touch on really briefly here for Vizio. A couple weeks ago, they canceled one and broke it out into 4. Then last week, they basically listed 4 of them. This week, they've got some additional ones out there, but it's all Vizio improved interoperability between Vizio web and desktop apps. So the fact they've now given you this Vizio web app, they're trying to work on making sure that it's not, night and day difference between the desktop and the Vizio web app. It's never going to be exact that you've got feature parity across the board, but they're trying to get closer. So the first one is you'll be able to open files that were previously not supported for editing in Vizio on the web. So that's a good thing. You can edit shapes with certain properties like gradients, fills, and ink spots. However, some interactions will be blocked or optimized. We'll have to see what that amounts to. That's supposed to be out in February, and all these are across the board: GCC High, GCC, DoD, and worldwide. Second one is users will be able to open files that were previously not supported for editing and edit shapes with 1 and 2D protection and additional shape properties. However, some interactions will be blocked or optimized. That one, which doesn't sound a whole lot different from the first one, is going to be out in April 2022. And then the final one they have is users with, this is pictures for organizational charts in Vizio for the web, Vizio Plan 1 and Plan 2. For Plan 1, Plan 2 licenses, you'll be able to add pictures of team members directly to new org chart shapes for Vizio on the web. So that'll be nice. Yeah, really, it works out really nicely. So that's going to be in April also. Keep an eye open for that one. Let me see if there's anything else I want to touch on before I hand it back over to my 2 colleagues. Let's navigate. Oh, Microsoft Teams, LinkedIn integration in Teams. Users will be able to see LinkedIn profiles of their colleagues in one-on-one chats. The LinkedIn profile is available via the LinkedIn tab on the one-on-one chat panel. So
I don't know how I feel about that. I got to go out and clean up my LinkedIn profile.
This is
I think we all knew this was coming, though.
There's
been people talking. There's been buddies I've had that I know at conferences have talked about this for 2 to 3 years now. As soon as Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, it was like, eventually LinkedIn is just going to be incorporated in what you're doing in 365. Even if it's not the same thing, there's going to be Windows into it.
It'll be the flavor of.
Yeah, Microsoft would very much like LinkedIn to become a more continuous median for professional development that is relevant outside of just when you're looking for a job, which is right now what mostly LinkedIn is. Microsoft would love if your LinkedIn profile becomes more relevant to what you're doing day to day in work. And this is the first step towards trying to get that to happen, I think.
It's almost like an Active Directory that isn't on your organization.
Yeah, exactly. It's an Active Directory that can move with you. Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. And if you think about it, like I can see some value in it. Like if you think about our company, Tamara, we have new people that start that you haven't been introduced to, that you get hit up in a chat or you see in a meeting or something like that. And oftentimes, unless you have like a personal introduction to them, you don't necessarily know their background, you don't know their skill set. And Planet's like 80% tech people, right? And so chances are they're going to be an engineer, they're going to be an architect of some kind, but you don't necessarily know their skill set. If by default there's an integration point that you can just hover over and say, oh, okay, here's their background, here's what they've done, that's a very easy thing to do without you having to take the next step. So I see some value in it, but 1,000% this is Microsoft trying to move towards making LinkedIn a more valuable professional currency.
Hi, this is now an option in Microsoft 365 LinkedIn. So yeah. Tamara, did you want to touch on anything before we throw this to Adam?
One more thing in development, and this is big for project managers, and that's Microsoft Project guest users in Project for the web. It used to be that unless you had Microsoft Project, you couldn't see the project plan, and the PM would have to run all of these reports because companies are like, I will buy 2 licenses of Microsoft Project. I only have 2 PMs. I only need 2 licenses.
Or hell, you get 1 so the PMs can share. They're probably not going to have meetings at the same time.
Hot potato. But this, you can add a guest user to your project and allow them to view the project information. What I would also like, Microsoft, if you're listening, is that the guest users would also be able to update, not necessarily create stuff, but update stuff that already exists. So if they have tasks that are assigned to them,
or edit stuff,
yeah, just edit, so that they can go in and they can edit their own task and say,
I'm completed, I'm 75% of the way done, whatever.
Yeah. So the PM doesn't have to also be the administrative assistant for the project. It is such a waste of a good PM's time to be a note taker and the person who is the interface between the email and Microsoft Project.
Exactly.
It's just a stupid waste of time.
Adam, did we touch on the ones you wanted to cover, or are you good to go with one other one before we roll on?
Yeah, y'all touched on a couple of them, but I typically got comments, and I thought that the LinkedIn integration would be interesting to at least note. I also was interested in what you brought up about the saving of the meetings, just because, again, like we talked about that one. It's probably worth noting, I'll combine 2 into one quick update for you. There's 2 different quality of life updates they're giving for admins related to how Microsoft communicates out information and issues. What the 2 updates were, right now, if there is a large impacting issue, which luckily doesn't happen often, but when it does, say something is messed up that is actually impacting multiple different services. So it's not just Exchange is having a problem, it's Exchange is having a problem, SharePoint's having a problem, Active Directory is having a problem. They right now and historically have filed that under a generic Office 365 tag in their status page, but that doesn't necessarily represent what you're having issues. So if you're a help desk person and someone's saying, hey, my Outlook isn't connecting, and you go and look and there's an Office 365 outage, maybe that's what's causing it, but I don't really know because Office 365 is a giant umbrella. They're going to add additional nuance to that where they'll still tag it as an Office 365 outage, but they'll be able to identify the specific services that were
SharePoint, Outlook, so on and so forth. Yeah.
And so previously they'd be like, this is an Exchange outage, or this is an Office 365 outage that could be anything. Now it's going to be, this is an Office 365 outage that's impacting Exchange and Teams, so that way you know what the services are actually impacted. So just a little bit extra nuance, which is good. The other thing too, which is also kind of nice, especially as we're starting to get more compartmentalized specialties inside of people, you now have the ability, previously if you wanted to get notified of like issues that Microsoft was having or updates going on, you just signed up to say, yeah, Microsoft can notify me, but you got everything when they did that. If there's any issue going on, you got notified. If there's any information they wanted to send out, you got notified. Now they're basically categorizing it where you can go in and you can say, well, I'm the SharePoint admin at my system. I care about the SharePoint updates. I don't really care what you're doing about email. That doesn't impact me.
Right.
And so now you'll be able to go in and basically subscribe to the specific sections that you care about. So then if there's an outage with your system or there's notifications they need to send about your system, you'll get those. But it will be, then when you're getting stuff from Microsoft, it's actually related to what you do. Like
Exactly.
Tom, for you, for instance, you do primarily SharePoint stuff. If you signed up for these notifications and 9 out of the 10 ones you got were about email, pretty soon you're not paying attention for when they come in because they're
Pretty
not
much so, yeah.
So being able to subscribe to the ones that actually have meaning for you, again, just a little bit more nuance and quality of life improvements.
Very cool. Well, let's go ahead and roll on to rolling out. See what I did there.
I see what you did there.
And with that, so she can't make any more comments, Tamara, would you like to tell us some of the rolling out that you'd like to talk about?
Sorry, I'm channeling Katharine Hepburn. I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we can't hang up, and she doesn't have to deal with me. I just get up, open the door, and say hi.
He just walks into my office.
I feel like I'm a force multiplier for Tom's oddness in a bad way for Tamara. Like Tom is normally good, but you put Tom and I in a room together, and it's just like we're bringing each other to 11.
It all goes to hell.
On that note, bail us out here with the topic at least once.
All right, this is exciting, people. This is really exciting. Microsoft Teams mute notifications during meetings.
Agreed.
Oh my God, I'm trying to focus. Number one, I have trouble focusing anyway. So Alexa just went off. So
notifications.
I'm like, I wonder what got delivered. But it turns off. Users will be able to mute notifications during meetings, thereby helping focus during meetings. What I need is them to allow me to turn off all my notifications. And a user can choose to mute notifications for all meetings or a per meeting basis. And that's rolling out the end of this month. So I'm excited about that. Let's see where it's rolling out to. Oh, it's rolling out to everybody. That's
yeah.
good. GCC, GCC High, DoD, and the commercial tenant. So I'm excited about that.
The thing that I also like, excuse me, about that one is that I don't necessarily mind seeing a notification come up. What bothers me is the way my screen's laid out. I have my comments running down the right-hand side of my screen, and the notifications pop up at the very bottom, just like I have one right now. Well, unfortunately, it usually pops up just about the time I'm trying to respond to a comment, and it blanks out my area where I can't type in a new message, or I all of a sudden can't see what part of the message I've already typed in, and then I need to wait for that to go away. And about that time, I start typing again, and another one pops up. I'll just be happy to say, yeah, if I'm not sharing, I can still make sure I don't get any notifications. So that's awesome. I like that one a lot. Any other one you want to bring up?
That's my favorite. I'll let you go next so that I don't rain on your parade because there's not a lot of stuff going on there.
So this one that I'm going to mention here, at first I was like, yeah, fine, whatever. But because I switched this week from Chrome to Edge because I got sick and tired of a certain error I was getting in Chrome, I know that Microsoft Search is doing some really cool things with Bing and being able to use these things in Edge. Well, in Bing now, you're going to be able to do conversation searches. So if you go to search for something, you will also find conversations that have happened in Team and Outlook to show up in your Microsoft Search instead of just getting files or list items or sites or stuff like that. I think they are doing some really cool stuff right now with Microsoft Search and really building it out and taking it to the next level, other than just, well, SharePoint Search works this way, but Search works a different way over here in Outlook. It's starting to become more and more common across the board, and I think that is really awesome. So that's kind of my major thing. I know we've talked about a lot of these rolling out things before when they were in development. Adam, you want to throw out anything that makes you happy in rolling out?
Yeah, I'll do one real quick for us. I thought this was kind of cool, and this is the first time I've seen this. I must have missed when it was originally in development. It's probably during the month of January. I was swamped in work. They're rolling out DNSSEC/DANE support for SMTP email. That's several acronyms that don't necessarily matter to me too much. SMTP email is the basic sending protocol that original email used. Modern email typically uses MAPI, so this isn't going to be for that. But if you're still doing basic how original email worked, it was built on Popper, IMAP in, and SMTP out.
Right.
DNSSEC or DANE are basically a new standard that involves SMTP-based email delivery, where specifically DNSSEC is a way that allows you to basically have trusted authorities of basically SSL certs that you trust to send through there. So you go through and say, these are people I expect to be getting email from, or they can publish one and I can say, yes, it's good. I know who's going through it. It's basically a way to kind of do what DKIM or DMARC does for MAPI, but on basic SMTP. And DANE is a protocol that only works if that is in place. So this is Microsoft basically saying, we are going in and working on putting this in place for 365 for outbound mail, specifically if you are using SMTP-based send, which some systems still need SMTP mail sent to them, that still allows you to do increased security. So don't worry about it too much. All it means is there is a new security standard that's being developed for basic email sending, and Microsoft is working to develop it into their platform and allow you to use it.
So either of you have anything else before we move on to launched?
I say it's probably worth noting there was a ton of Sharepoint syntax stuff that they went
Yes.
through and added. If you care about some of the stuff with that, about like stuff of what they're going through, and a lot of this is stuff like exact structure of commands you're passing in or tags you can do stuff, just know that that's in there. So if you do SharePoint design style work or handle that type of stuff specifically, there's potentially stuff that's moving and rolling out that you'd be interested in, but we don't need to talk about all of it.
Very cool. Finally, in launch, Tamara, anything that we've probably discussed in the past that you want to say, hey, people, it's out there?
Let me look. I'm having problems scrolling. I have a scroll issue.
Would you like me to cover something and then you can catch up?
No, I want to go first.
Okay, fine. Go for it.
Microsoft Teams sensitivity labels for Teams templates. So sensitivity labels will be supported when creating Teams with templates. This feature is no longer rolling out. Like, they had to put that in there so you would know it was launched, even though the status says launch. Trust your metadata, people.
And
Trust
also,
your
if you just go
metadata.
through and find this and it says this feature is no longer rolling out, you don't really know the nuance of the Microsoft thing. It'd be like, what does that mean? It's out or not? Did they like stop it mid
Did it
rollout?
stop?
Did you
Yeah.
pull it back? What happened?
Cool.
And then SharePoint rules engine for alerts. So Microsoft is also adding no-code rules engines to drive content alerts based on the rules wizard in Microsoft lists. Alerts use a simple no-code wizard to send updates when documents are added or deleted, or when somebody edits the metadata. So I think it's going to give us a lot more flexibility than we had with alerts. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was automatically build visualization of library metadata with Power BI.
Ooh.
So this is going to enable customers to visualize the metadata in a document library in a Power BI report. They can also save that report so that future visitors to the document library can view it. I think this is going to be great for knowledge managers who have to manage a lot of information, and they'll be able to see where there are blanks or whether there's a large quantity blanks, and maybe reevaluate how they're asking their users to contribute additional tags, metadata descriptions to the documents that are being put into that repository.
Good point. I just have one that I'm going to bring up here, and that is in Microsoft Search, new Bing industry news. So this industry news feature is going to give you a targeted set of news content specific to their company and industry. In addition, it offers access to news content for free that would otherwise be behind a paid subscription firewall, such as Wall Street Journal and more. So I don't know that I've seen a lot of information on how to set that up, But I think that's great if you're in insurance or healthcare or something like that, to be able to see things coming out in Bing industry news. When you're using Edge, it pops up. This is great. Just to be able to see some of those articles that you might want to catch, especially if you don't happen to have a subscription to, say, the Wall Street Journal. You can get that information through what you have from your organization. So I think that one's cool. Adam, you want to close us out on Launched?
Sure. One that I thought was cool, they have Microsoft Information Protection Exchange Online Service Encryption using Microsoft Managed Keys for the government clouds. Basically, if you have a compliance requirement that you need to make sure your data is encrypted at rest, in addition to just the basic TLS style encryption that you have for everything, this gives you the ability to basically turn on, yes, hardcore encrypt my data at rest. We're talking about like 256-bit keys that they're doing. You either have the option to let Microsoft manage all the keys, including the root keys, or provide your own. It's completely up to you what you want to do. But you have the ability to basically switch that on or apply to have that switched on your data on your behalf. Mostly this is going to be important for people that are hyper concerned about the security of what they're doing or compliance, which is almost all the government customers. So nice to see that finally make it out to the GovCloud.
Very cool. Well, we have three items.
Did you just call it the Gov Club?
The GovCloud. I said cloud. I just maybe didn't
Cloud? I thought you said club. I'm like,
I mean, it could be the GovClub.
Club. So we do have three items in canceled. One of them is SharePoint updated tag columns for images. This has been canceled, being it's a duplicate of another one. So you're still going to get your tags for images. You're just not going to get it under the number that they canceled. And then you have two where the feature is postponed and will be republished as soon as the timeline is defined.
Those two are listed as the same. Oh, no.
Well,
one's
one's
DoD,
GCC
one's
High.
GCC.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the item is prompt to set meeting options for large team meetings in Outlook for Windows in, fill in your tenant, which is GCC High and DoD. So
but if you look at the updates, like literally everything else about the
it's
update
word
is
for
the
word.
same,
Yeah.
those words. Yeah.
I think when I was looking through it the first time, I'm going, and those are different. How?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, you're probably going to get it. They just need to figure out what the timeline is to be able to get that out into GCC High and DoD. And with that, that pretty much covers our list. I hope you all have a great weekend.
Hopefully the Super Bowl is fun if people care.
Yeah, if you want to do the Super Owl
Go
or
rah
Super
rah
Bowl
ball sports.
Yeah, I know. Tamara's gonna be
I'm
right
the
there
only
on the
sports
crossword.
nerd in our group, so I'm like I gotta represent for the people that do like sports.
I will probably
Jen has a
watch it.
sports ball T-shirt.
There'll be good commercials. Yeah, Jen does have a sports ball T-shirt.
Yeah. For me, it's like, yeah, let's watch. And if it gets out of control in the first, I'm like, I'm out of here.
I'm a proper sports nerd. Like I was in 4 fantasy leagues this season for fantasy football.
You are hardcore.
I'm a nerd. Like I pay for a TV subscription and pay for like a super fancy TV subscription just so I can get NFL games. Like I basically pay like $300 year round every month, so that for the little bit that I can get NFL games that I want. Because I'm subscribed to the package that gives me like every NFL game that airs that I can theoretically go through and do. And then the premium version of that gives me the special edition of the Red Zone channel that I watch most of the time when it's on. So yeah.
So this is why Adam works 60 hours a week,
Yeah.
so he can afford his
Support his
sports
television
addiction.
habit.
Although hopefully soon I'll be able to potentially cancel that. So I'm in one of those typical like I'm intertwined with all the services in one, but they are placing Google Fiber lines in my network now,
Ooh.
and they're also expanding out to more providers of the fancy football stuff I buy. So it might make it more viable to consider switching.
All right,
Cool.
and none of this is on the Microsoft roadmap.
No.
So thank you so much for attending, and everybody have a great weekend.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
Go sports
everyone.
ball.